Baseball is back.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send them all the way around. Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
I'm Ivan Melendez.
I'm Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Tori Lavello, and you're listening to the Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dbacks podcast, where we bring you all the hottest Arizona Diamondbacks tea and talk. This week, from both sides of the pond, we're proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. This week, we're doing our season preview, so we needed somebody who's got a little more intellect, a little more expertise than just my armchair coaching. So for that, we've gone and we've recruited Alex D'Agostino from Arizona Diamondbacks on Sports Illustrated. Alex, welcome to the show. What are you drinking?
We've got a nice little sort of orange spice tea going on here. Good Earth. It's pretty good. Probably a very American tea, but it's good.
Okay, let's kick things off at the start with the starters. Zac Gallen has been announced for the opening day starting role. This has come as a bit of a shock. Most people were expecting it to be Corbin Burnes as the #1 guy, the ace of the rotation, especially given how much the monetary value of his contract kind of blew a lot of people out of the water, and everyone was expecting, opening day would be more of a formality. Is this Tori Lavello trying to curry some brownie points with Zac Gallen's free agency coming up? Are we trying to say, yeah, you know what, you are the guy, you've had this role for the last 2 years, have it for one more year, and then stay with the Diamondbacks, or is he simply the best man for the job?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of a few things. It's definitely not... He's not getting brownie points trying to convince Gallen to stay here. I think it's more along the lines of, and Tori was very consistent in telling us this, that he's been really sort of tossing and turning with the decision, and it really took him a while to figure it out. He was having conversations with other people and the coaching staff and whatnot. And I think what it comes down to is, Zac Gallen has been here for a long time, and he's been very successful here. He was crucial to getting to the World Series. He, led them through the playoffs. He took a no-hitter, 6 innings into an elimination game in the World Series. He's a good pitcher. We look at the two of them, and is Burnes probably a better pitcher than Gallen? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably not even a question. But at the same time, we've seen what Gallen can do. We've seen him, he pitched he had a 2.54 ERA in 2022. The last couple of years, it felt like maybe he hasn't been able to get into the same kind of rhythm, but he pitched like 230 innings in 2023. Gallen's a very important part of this team. And I think Tori, while he's not necessarily trying to convince Gallen to stay, he knows he's not going to be here for very long, most likely. He knows it's quite possible. I don't know have any inside information there, but it's quite possible that this is his last year with the Diamondbacks. And I think it's just an honor to a long-time member of the rotation and somebody who's been so important. So I don't think it's political entirely, but it also is kind of just a sign of respect, even though Burnes is a better pitcher overall.
Yeah, so Corbin Burnes, I'm saying maybe he's not the best man for the job, but then this is representative of a mentality that the Diamondbacks are taking seemingly for the whole year this year. We're just going to go with who's best for the job as much as it fits within the rotation. So, yeah, Zac Gallen, best man for the job, opening day away at the Cubs. Is that all there is to this, or am I reading too much into things already?
Yeah, I don't think it's too much to read into. I think, like I said, it's really just, it's about giving the honor to somebody who's been important to this organization. That's something Tori's been consistent with just across the board. Same with, Mike Hazen. They like to reward their players. You see it, regularly. So I don't think it's that deep. Burnes and Gallen are friends. They're on good terms with each other. There's not going to be, Burnes was asked about it last night. He said, there's no bad blood. He's like, we're in a fantasy league together. We, pick each other's brains about just pitching and whatnot. So it doesn't go that deep. I would say traditionally you would look at Burns as your opening day starter, but I think it's a special circumstance, and we can't forget how good Gallen has been for this team, even if it hasn't quite looked as smooth the last year or two.
So if we're not winning brownie points, since it's already we've already established Zac Gallen, he's already said, and as far as I know, he hasn't retracted the statement that when his free agency comes around, he'll go to whoever offers him the most money. Are there any odds that might end up being us, or have we, spurned our whole pitching budget now?
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to imagine him sticking with the Diamondbacks, to be totally honest. Not because I don't think he wants to stay. I think he does want to stay in Arizona. He has a house here. But at the same time, yeah, I don't think the Diamondbacks are going to be in a position to offer him anywhere close to the sort of contract that he's going to get elsewhere. But that also depends on how he pitches this year. So, if he has a really, really poor year, that might look different. I don't know. I personally don't see him coming back next year, especially with Burns under contract. But the rotation is going to look different next year, and I think it's going to depend on a few things. How he pitches this year, how the young guys look, if there's development there. How maybe even Erod is kind of a wild card at this point because we haven't gotten to see really what he can do. So I think there's a lot of factors at play. I would say I lean towards him, this being Gallen's last year as a Diamondback, though.
So that would potentially bookend something of a chapter of successful Diamondbacks dynasty baseball. And then we have to look at maybe looking a bit more to the future. And it's a seamless transition into our next talking point with some of the youth and the depth on this roster, and potentially some big names who are excited about not making the 40-man at the start of the season. The three I really want to bring up: Dre Jameson, Jordan Lawler, Yilba Diaz. So the question we want to ask: do we have too much depth?
It's a great problem to have. It is a great problem to have. I think with Jameson, it was a combination of things. Number one, his velocity was amazing. Location was a little bit spotty. But what Torey said was they really wanted him, because of the role that he's in, they really wanted him to be able to do multiple innings. So, back-to-back innings, or pitch back-to-back days, or, go 2 innings. And it wasn't so much that he's not fully recovered, but kind of what Torey was telling us, the information from the medical team was saying that it probably wasn't the best idea to push him to go for length. And they already kind of have a lot of those short relievers. And so, former starter, for what they wanted out of Jameson, they want to see him kind of being able to provide length and be able to pitch, often. He's not quite there yet. I would be surprised if he's not pitching meaningful innings for this team at some point soon, whether that's, mid-season, late season, or next year. It's going to be soon. But that's kind of why what happened to him. And Lawler, it's been pretty consistent where they want to get him everyday playing time. They don't want him to be a platoon backup infielder, which I think is a little bit... I understand where they're coming from developmentally. They don't want to hinder that development by, giving him one at-bat every couple of games. That's what happened when he came up in 2023, and it didn't look pretty. But I also think at a certain point you have to just say you're ready for this. So I don't know if he's going to be up this year. I feel like he's showing that he's ready. He hit pretty well in spring training. I don't know if he's 100% there, but I think he's pretty close.
Yeah, I think we're all probably expecting to see Jordan Lawler as an everyday guy for the Diamondbacks at the very least next year, but potentially sooner than that. Who knows? And we're going to pray for not having injury crises like we've had in recent years, but, having a guy with the versatility to play third, short, second is good to hear. And speaking of versatility, we've got a lot more of that in various positions. How are we going to get the best out of the fact that we have guys like Ildemaro Vargas, Garrett Hampson, who's already exploring options elsewhere if he doesn't make our 40-man? What are we going to do with all of these utility guys in only one spot?
Yeah, it's been an interesting battle. I mean, I think part of it is, We saw what happened with Kevin Newman last year, and just how crucial he was, and unexpectedly so. I mean, he's a good player. He's had a history of having some good seasons, but I don't think anybody expected him to come in and be that good. And so I think maybe they're trying to reharness that power again, trying to find that version of Kevin Newman this year. I think, Hampson opted out. That doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to make the team. That's been well reported. I think he's in the lineup today, actually. So it's at the beginning, I thought Hampson was kind of the default because he could play the outfield, and they really like, mega versatility, as much of that as possible. So at that time, I thought it would be Hampson. At this point, it looks like it's going to be Vargas, but I don't know. I think, again, it's kind of a good problem to have, that you have all these guys that are kind of able to do a lot of things, but at a certain point, it's going to come down to one player, and that one player might be pushed out if Lawler comes up, or if Blaze Alexander, heals up and they decide to call him up. So I think it's interesting how many options they brought in for that, because they brought in a lot of other guys too, like like Gray Kessinger, Connor Kaiser, some of those guys, even Trey Mancini, even though he's more of a first baseman. But again, good problem to have. But I think it's probably going to come down. I think it's going to be Vargas. I think it is at this point. But I feel like Hampson provides the most overall versatility. So who knows?
Yeah, I've got to say, I lean towards Vargas just in terms of personal preference, because, this is a guy who's got a 12th inning walk-off for the Diamondbacks. How can you even match an
Right.
obscure stat like that? Why would you not bring him back into the team? And this is even before I started following the team. I had to go back and dig through the archives to find that one, but it's a pretty cool stat to have under your belt. But do we need a backup outfielder? You have Grichuk, who can play there. McCarthy, Gurriel, Corbin Carroll are going to be probably your everyday guys. And then Alec Thomas, we're looking for a spot for him in the lineup still. And he's a guy who's had some huge moments in his Diamondbacks career already, and we think still has a lot of untapped potential. So does it make more sense if we just focus on making sure that infield is covered off?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I don't think they necessarily need a guy who can play the outfield, but you never know what could happen with injuries and, underperformance and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's probably safe to say that at the time when Hazen was talking about it, at the time they were prioritizing somebody who could play in the outfield as well. I think that's kind of maybe not so much of a priority anymore. But you never know. They were talking about giving Blaze some reps in the outfield, but I'm not sure if that ever happened. He certainly never played out there in a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, we're not sure what's going to happen with Blaze as of yet this year, but you did mention, speaking of both guys who can play the outfield and injury crises, that brings us neatly onto talking about one of the most, some would say underrated, I would say one of the most baseball players of all time on the Diamondbacks roster. We're talking about Pavin Smith, and as I was writing the brief for what this episode was going to be, I was listening to a podcast where somebody said, oh yeah, Pavin, Diamondbacks slobbering all over him, slathering, waiting for him to finally come good. We've ragged on him a lot on this show, but he was 3 for 4 with 4 RBIs and 5 bases against the A's on Thursday this week, and continuing a really strong spring. He's got a 317 average, and he's got a 916 OPS. Has he finally found this spring training what it takes to be the everyday big leaguer that some people thought he might be back in 2021? After slashing 270, 358, 595 between August and the end of the season last year, ignoring the fact he exited Friday's game with a right wrist contusion.
Yeah, I think last year really showed a lot of his potential. I think Torres was very happy about that. Torres maintained, Pavin Smith can hit. That's something that he says a lot.
Yeah, we're getting sick of hearing that.
It's true, though. Pavin can hit, but I think it's going to be a transition for him playing every day. or close to every day. Obviously, he's not going to be starting every day at first base, but he's probably figures to be the left-handed side of the DH for most of the year. I don't know. I don't know if he showed enough of a sample size last year to prove that he has arrived as a full-time player, but there's a lot of potential in there that I think is starting to get realized, and I think he could be a serviceable, good hitter. I don't know if he's going to be anywhere close to what Jock Peterson was last year, but I think there should be more respect on Pavin's name these days after what he did last year and what he's done this spring. But I don't know if that's going to translate to full-time or heavy playing load. I think that's going to be a lot to ask of him right away, and it might take a while for him to get back into rhythm with that. So it might be a grind getting there, but we'll see. We'll see.
Damn, I'm considering myself called out here for being a Pavin hater in this. Man, it's been hard for me to stay a Pavin hater this spring training because Diamondbacks social team have been killing it over on TikTok. Pavin's really emerged as one of the big sort of personalities on the roster that I wasn't really expecting him to be. We all know about how Domo and Josh Naylor struck up a new bromance, and Zac Gallen has some wild answers. Torey Lovello can come in here and say the craziest stuff you'll ever see. But yeah, Pavin Smith is an entertaining guy, and I'm trying really hard to still have some balance and not just be wildly positive or negative on a guy. But who knows? Justin Verlander is in the NL West this year. It's Pavin Smith's favorite pitcher to play against. Yeah. Home run at every at bat confirmed. How likely do we think that's going to be?
That would be pretty. That would be something, all right. But he must just have his number. I don't know.
All right, and then let's move on to some of the more breaking news from yesterday, as we're recording it, with the news reported by your colleagues over at Sports Illustrated. Justin Martinez has agreed a contract extension.
That was me.
So I'll go back and cut this. Let's get on to some of the breaking news as reported by yours truly over at Sports Illustrated, coming out of the Diamondbacks clubhouse yesterday as we're recording this podcast, that Justin Martinez has extended their stay at the Diamondbacks on a 5-year, $18 million contract. His stuff has been electric this spring training, and yet he is not the closer. Explain that one to me.
Yeah. First off, I think it's an awesome it's an awesome extension. It's really good value, and it's kind of crazy to think about. If he reaches the full potential of what he looks like he can be, this is going to be an amazing deal. He's not the closer yet. And I think yet is really the important word there. He will be the closer at one point, and it probably will be soon. I mean, they tried to give it to him last year, and there was just a few little things that went on that kind of, I think, showed that he maybe wasn't ready for that role full time, just mentally. There were instances of him getting flustered in high leverage situations. He would try to do too much sometimes, fielding the ball in those situations. It would lead to, big innings. But at the same time, he was still 8 for 10 in save opportunities. So it wasn't like he was blowing saves all over the place, but there was still clearly sort of an aspect to kind of his mental game. And he was 23 years old. So it's understandable. I think it's not unfair to him to say that a closer role is not something that you just step into very quickly. But I think he's got the stuff, and this year his mentals have improved, I believe. He has said that he thinks it's improved. Torey has said that he thinks it's improved. So I think he's right on the cusp of that, but I think they just want to ease him into that role a little bit. If he has a really hard start to the season, that might be a different story, but I think if he looks really good and he's going to get save opportunities. He might not be named the closer. He's going to get plenty of save opportunities this year. And I think if he does well and he really kind of shows that maturity, I think it won't be long before he is named the official closer. as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned earlier on that the plan for Joe Jameson when he's up is potentially going to be the long relief guy. When some people have talked about maybe he would be a candidate for the closer role, were an official one to be named. But looking at how the bullpen looks right now with Kevin Ginkel, AJ Puck, but if you think about a save opportunity, it's still hard to imagine anybody other than Justin Martinez being put into the game at that point. As good as those other guys are, does anyone realistically think they can challenge? Torrey's already said he's going to go matchup for matchup, which has angered a lot of people, but is it going to be anyone else than Justin Martinez 99.9% of the time?
I think you're going to see a lot of Puck, but it'll depend on, what's happening in the game. The dilemma is, sort of putting Puck into just a ninth inning role very, very much limits his usefulness, especially with, only one other legitimate left-hander in the bullpen with Joe Manaply.
Famous all-star Joe Manaply.
All-star, yeah. Hey, Joe's good. He is, and he's gonna pitch some good, meaningful innings too. But with only one lefty, that kind of limits what you can do. And I think that's kind of the dilemma that they're facing, because Puck is probably overall the best reliever kind of in the bullpen right now. But I think it'll be a combination of him, Martinez, and like a Ginkel every now and then.
Yeah, Kevin Ginkel closer. I'd want to see that experiment happen. That's fun. He's a friend of the podcast. I've bumped into him at Sports Expressions Mall last year. But this has been an off-season where the Diamondbacks have gone out and extended as much as they've gone out and signed in a lot of ways. Does this contract for Justin Martinez, this new contract, which is a steal when you look at the value per year, I don't think anybody's going to dispute that. Does this mean that we're done potentially trading this year?
Yeah, I'm not sure that any sort of, most of the time, big trades don't go down during spring training or between spring training and the early part of the season. Deadline's a different story, obviously, but I think you're looking at the roster for what it is right now. If they wanted to go out and get a closer or get a high leverage reliever, they got Kendall Graveman, who is injured. I'm not sure you see much, barring any sort of major injury. I don't think you see any major additions. Depending on what's going on with Pavin, they might call up Mancini again. But I don't think they're adding anybody, position player or bullpen, anytime soon.
Yeah, Trey Mancini, of course, reassigned to minor league camp a little over a week ago. There's the potential there for him to really break out in the minors. He's somewhat of an unknown quantity of whether or not he can be the guy that those over at the Orioles, they knew he could be. Of course, coming back from surgery for colon cancer, really having to fight his way back to get to having a shout in with the majors. Obviously, got that opportunity with the Diamondbacks somewhat unexpectedly. Is there potential that he could be more than just a backup first baseman? Do you think he has the stuff to be part of a DH consideration, and that could be a pathway back? Because I think a lot of guys and a lot of fans, myself included, want to see him back in the majors and tick that final box. And what an incredible story that would be. How realistic do you think that is?
Yeah, I would love to see him with the team too. I think, like you said, a lot of people would. It's a great story. We have a good article from our publisher Jack Summers at Diamondbacks on SI about Mancini, but I think it might. I don't know if the DH is necessarily a pathway for him, but I do think that he would be a useful guy to have in the back pocket, and I think he can hit at this level. I think he showed that in spring training. I don't remember what his numbers were, but they were good. They were really good, and he told Jack that he has no intention of opting out. So we'll see. I don't know, but he was very adamant that he was just happy to be a part of everything and really enjoyed the Diamondbacks organization, and so he doesn't intend to opt out. We'll see. We'll see. So I think there'll be an opportunity for him at some point. I'm not sure if that means if that would equate to, taking a different role than just kind of that infielder role, but anything can happen. We don't know.
I mean, if you want to stay in peak physical condition, where better to be than Arizona, that's for sure. But speaking of redemption arcs, this is something we've talked to high heck about on the show already, but Jordan Montgomery, let's get on to him, because we also talked about devastating injury crises. There's one of those going on up at the Pinstripes Park in New York. What's going to happen there? I've talked about, if we're going to trade a starting pitcher to New York previously in spring training, and I want to go and ring them for all they're worth when it comes to prospects and cash. Do you think Jordan Montgomery's going anywhere?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, I think it was Gambo that said they are receiving a little bit of interest on him. I'm not sure how true that is or what teams those were. Usually Gambo's right in his reporting, but I don't know. That's been an interesting. This has been a really, really odd saga with Montgomery, because he looked a lot better his last time out. The velocity was back up, the movement was back up. He just looked a lot closer to what he used to be. But I don't know if that's going to play into the regular season like what happened to him last year. So I think they were very obvious with the fact that they wanted to trade him, and then when nothing materialized, leading up to spring training, I think that kind of sealed him in, because I don't think they wanted to do to him what happened last year, which is land, in the middle of, or the end of spring training somewhere, and just kind of have the whole mess of getting ramped up and kind of not being in playing shape right away. At this point, I would say I'm leaning towards him sticking on the roster as either the fifth starter or kind of the mop-up long reliever like he was at the end of last year. I think Fott is winning that fifth starter's role right now, so I do think it's possible. There. Yeah, it hasn't been. So I think his contract forces him into that fifth starter conversation, but for right now, I would bet he ends up as the mop-up reliever on the roster to start the year, but that's just a hunch.
Yeah, I mean, as hunches go, I would rather hunch him somewhere else and get some cash in, but I don't want to see him wind up as another Bumgarner situation where we're just throwing money at a guy who's sipping Mai Tais by the pool and not even with the team anymore. But we're getting towards the end of our time slot now. We're going to have a little bit more fun than just let's rag on Montgomery, let's call Pavin Smith the greatest hitter who ever lived. Let's get your predictions for where the Diamondbacks finish in the division, questions on do you make the postseason, and who is you're going to say MVP on the side going into this year.
Yeah, well, nobody's beating the Dodgers. You'll just get that out of the way. But I think it's very realistic to see the Diamondbacks get second place in the division, win 90 games. I think it's very much in play. I think the pitching should be much, much better this year. Even if it's not top 10, like 15th, 16th would be a major improvement from what it was last year, which was like 26th or 27th, just behind teams like the Rockies and the White Sox, which is kind of insane. So I definitely think that a postseason should be in play. They absolutely should make it. They should be, at the very least, contending for second place in the division. I don't know what the Padres are going to look like. It doesn't look good, but you never know. They're kind of they're a persistent team, even if they're not consistent. So I think second place is very attainable. MVP, it's hard to put anyone else over Ketel Marte.
Even Corbin Carroll after his.
But that's where I'm leading to. I think Corbin might unlock something this year, and I think it might be actually, it might be his team this year. But But obviously, Cattell was a homer away from the cycle last night, and he saw like 10 pitches. So I, I don't know.
I mean, we all know how good.
It's hard to beat him.
We all know how good Cattell is, but I've seen several bookies in Arizona offering actual odds and will take bets on a Corbin Carroll 40-40 year. So you just never know. But of course, we all know Pavin Smith's going to blow them all out of the water.
Obviously, yeah.
Obviously,
it's going to be Pavin.
We're doing a complete 180. Pavin Smith is the show's favorite player now. I don't care who's in the intro. I don't care who we've talked about before. Pavin Smith's the show's favorite player. Alex, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
For sure.
We're hoping to see you in person at a Diamondbacks game sooner or later in the summer. And if you are a listener in the UK and you want to get yourselves out to a Major League Baseball game, be sure to go and check out friends of the podcast over at the Home Run Travel Company, where myself and plenty of other super knowledgeable people who aren't all armchair coaches are going to be touring up and down the Southwest and the West Coast this summer, visiting Los Angeles, Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco, Anaheim, and then a little small break-off group of mine will be coming to see the Diamondbacks when the Seattle Mariners are in town in the start of June. So if you want to get yourself out there, Home Run Travel Company are your guys. Alex, thank you very much for joining on the show. Do you want to give a quick shout out to where people can find you over on socials?
Yeah, so I'm at AlexDagAZ on Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called now. Otherwise, Diamondbacks on SI. We are not a part of Sports Illustrated National, but you can find us at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. We do a lot of great work, all of us out there.
I can certainly testify to the fact that you guys do great work. That's where I go and get my ideas for half of my podcast episodes. So, Alex, thanks very much for joining on the show. We hope to have you back on sometime. That's been our season preview for 2025 for the Arizona Diamondbacks, heading into, of course, the Year of the Snake. If you want to know why the Diamondbacks are going to win the World Series this year, please check out our special Year of the Snake preview episode. That's our episode. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.